Joliet is absent with notice. Jackson?
Here.
Lubes? Nelson was absent with notice. Hoffman?
Present.
Spiz?
Here.
And Commissioner Woodward?
Here.
Here is ex officio. McGillivray?
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have quorum.
Thank you. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from February 7th. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Janet,
Hi.
supported by Hoffman. Any discussions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Like sign for those opposed. Motion carries. Next is public comment. Is there anyone that would like to address this board on any items that are on the agenda?
The minutes?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, the agenda's next. Approval of the agenda.
Approval of the agenda, I'm sorry, I can't read.
So moved.
Moved by Spiz, supported by Lewis. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Like sign for those opposed. Motion carries. Next is public comment. Is there anyone that would like to address this board with related to only items on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on to communications. We have four communications. Human Resource Optional Supplementary Incentive Report for 22. Personnel Appeals Board for 22. Report of retirees, rehired, PT&E or contracted for 2022. And the last is Parks and Recreation grant application to the Michigan DNR for a dam risk reduction program.
I move, but I do have a question.
Okay.
I move to receive a file. I do have a question, I see April's here on 7A. Just a quick question. On the supplementary incentive report, I'm assuming these are all totals that you've seen? Heather?
Yes, yes.
These are all
that is-
totals and we've.
That is the total amount for each of that group,
All right, so for example, Sheriff's Office Corrections Deputy 1,
correct?
we paid $161,200. Out of the 50, we've actually hired 50 people and spent the $32.25 each.
Correct.
Okay, so we have 50 new officers in correction. That's what I agree with.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Which would be great if we didn't have 65 retired.
I know.
Are there any other questions on the communications?
We need a second.
Okay. Moved by Brendan, or supported by Brendan, I'm sorry. Without further discussion, we need a roll call vote.
Prompt the vote.
Roll call vote, please. Prompt the vote.
Okay. Mr. Chair, you have 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you so much. Next up is consent agenda. There is nothing. So we'll move down to the regular agenda. Item A is Parks and Recreation purchase of front end loader from Water Resource Commissioner. Moved by Spiz, supported by Jackson. Melissa?
Good morning. So this is a pretty simple item. WRC has a front end loader that they do not need anymore. We desperately need a front end loader out at the ORV park. We currently rent a front end loader from CAT for about $25,000 to $30,000 a year, which is quite expensive to our operating budget. So they're selling this one to us, including a few attachments that are very helpful for us for $40,000, which obviously we'll see the ROI in that in just a couple of years. So.
Any questions from Melissa? Michael?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple basic questions.
Yeah.
I'm assuming we have qualified users since we rent previously?
We do, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
You don't happen to know how many?
I think there's 2 or 3 folks out there who kind of
I'm
rotate
just
around
hoping
that
there's
use the
not just one,
equipment.
that's why I wanted to ask
No,
the
there's not
question.
just one, no.
I always like to have a few extras as backup. And I believe as part part of the packet that they're just gonna transfer the asset, so they're transferring the asset from water
From
resource
WRC to parks.
to parks
Yep.
for the $40,000.
Yes.
All right, and that was fair market value, so from the parks, or from the Water Resource Commissioner's perspective, that's gonna go to zero, it's just a transfer of.
I believe it's already fully depreciated, so I think it
Well,
is.
That's kind of what my
Yeah.
question, if it's fully depreciated, so 40,000 will come from Parks and Rec, and 40,000 will go back into Water Resource
Water
Commission?
Resource.
Yes.
Even though it's been fully depreciated?
Yes, because that, they would have otherwise sold it at auction, so they would have seen some revenue come in from that.
Okay,
Mr.
thank you.
The fact that it's depreciated doesn't matter, it's not a business, and it still has a market value.
It still has value.
Agree, I'm going through
Right.
the accounting in my head. You know, for my day job, we would just transfer the asset and not charge any money back and forth, but we're a business and we're everything else.
Yeah, two different pots of money.
Yep,
Right.
yep.
So,
Mr. Woodward?
so the question is, like in WRC, like, where does it go? Where in the budget? You won't,
I
you
have no
won't know
idea.
this.
The question is, where does the grant go?
Where does the 40 grand go? That, I think, is where you're trying to get
Yes.
at. We can get that question.
All right.
Is there any other questions on item A? If not, can you print the vote?
Sure.
Mr. Chair, you have 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you so much. Next item is item B, Human Resources implementing the salary administrative plan for the first quarter report for 2023. Is there a motion? Moved by Spiss, supported by Lutz.
Good morning.
Good morning, Heather.
If you recall, at our last meeting, I gave a brief explanation of how the HR department conducts salary grade reviews under Merit Rule 2 relating to the point factor evaluations for classifications. So for fiscal year '23, this is every study completed through December of '22. We have completed 3 studies impacting 3 classifications and a total of 6 positions. We are not creating any new classifications. We are only changing the point factor evaluations, which then change the salary grade for these classifications.
Are there any questions? Sounds pretty simple. Can you prompt the vote?
Sure. Mr. Chair, you have 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next up is item C, Human Resources 2023 to 2025 collective bargaining agreements for employees represented by the Oakland County Employees Union, IBEW Local 58, for non-supervisory employees in the animal shelter and adoption center, emergency management and homeland security facilities, maintenance and operations, sheriff's office, and parks and recreation.
Move it.
Moved by Spiz, supported by Hoffman. Go
Thank you.
ahead.
Before I get started, I'd like to formally introduce Dan Klepner. He is our Chief of Labor and Employee Relations. He's been with our department for 6 months. Previously, he was at Corporation Counsel before coming over and joining our team, and then previous to that, he has extensive experience in employee and labor law. So he's been a huge benefit to our team and will start leading negotiations as well with me. And so I just wanted to make sure you get to meet him because he was not able to be at the last meeting, so. All right, so what you have before you, I'm excited.
So am I. Thanks. Thanks for having that. Would explain why I started the last week.
All right, so what we have here is I just want to give a little bit of an overview on the IBEW. So prior to these 2 collective bargaining agreements, the IBEW was one group in totality. But we found over the last few years that it made the most sense to actually separate the IBEW into 2 groups, the WRC team, and then all of those, the other ones that we're talking about right now. A couple reasons for that is the WRC's but a fairly large group, and they are very unique in what they do. Even though some of these other groups are also unique, we are spending a lot more time very specifically with WRC. So both the IBW and WRC agreed that it would make the most sense to have one contract for WRC and one contract for the rest of IBW. So with that, today we have first is we call them the non-WRC group, and then the second one we'll talk about, which is the second one on the agenda, would be the WRC. And they're both fairly similar, but we'll go over those in detail. So what we have here, I won't go over all of the bullet points. We had a lot of contract cleanup this year, as well as like pulling out a lot of, if not with WRC, that kind of thing. But then also just have been here for 3 years. Then they had a new business manager as well with IBW. So just like a lot of kind of shoring up and clarifying things over the last few years. So you'll see a lot of those bullet points have to do with the cleanup. As it relates to the fiscal impact, they are a 3-year contract. It is 3% for year 1, 3 for year 2, and 2 for for the 3rd year. All of them also include what we call me also as the non-represented. So if for some reason we were to give like a 4 or something like that, they would also get that as well, which has been something we've done with all of the other units. We did increase the mobile custodial worker by $1 an hour. They don't have a set schedule. They move, they fill in, and so that was one of the things that they had requested. We are increasing their 457 match from $500 to $1,500 for participating members, and then we're doing a one-time contribution of $500 to help get those folks to sign up for the 457. So we're really excited about that, and we'll start campaigning with them as well about contributing to their 457. The other thing that we're doing is trying to really get more folks interested in getting and maintaining their CDL. It's been increasingly difficult, given just the ability to pass drug tests and drug screening and just having to do the work to go get the CDL. We're also bringing that in-house so that they can have access to training on a regular basis. So again, our goal is to get them certified and help them maintain that so that they can move around within the department as well. So instead of just very specific job descriptions having a CDL. Okay.
I was gonna ask specific questions, so I
Go
didn't
ahead.
want to wait till then. You mentioned we're bringing the training in-house. We're gonna now train CDL.
Yeah, we're gonna support the training inside. Yeah, where we can, instead of right now, they have to go outside and pay to have somebody help them with their to rent the truck, to take the test and all of that. So we'll have people certified in-house to be able to do that.
So that just drives bigger questions for me.
Sure, okay.
On how we're going to do that. Are we gonna now have additional roles that we're gonna create or job descriptions that we're gonna create for those people that do that, or is it gonna be added to an existing one? How's that training gonna happen? Because that's not, it's something I don't normally see
Right.
inside any organization. They
Sure.
usually always go outside for multiple reasons.
Right.
But
And some of
I'm
the
interested how we're gonna do that.
Sure, we're not there yet. That's where our goal is to do that, but I don't believe we're creating a new position in particular for it. I think we're repurposing another position that's
Okay.
gonna be focused on safety. We're working through all of that right now, but that is the goal. Either way, whether we go inside or go outside, we want more people to have a CDL. It allows them more flexibility to be able to drive all of our vehicles. So when we get to that point, I'm happy to share.
Yeah, please, one of my other questions would be, are we gonna offer that countywide
For what?
to other people that may be interested in getting a CDL?
We could take a look at it as
There
part of
might
our
be people in
apprenticeship. Sure.
different areas that say, hey, I'd be interested in a CDL, and if the county offers it, and it's reasonable.
I know, right?
Right?
Yeah, we can take a look at that,
I'm just
absolutely.
wondering.
Yeah, it'll be part of our risk management team. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
So we're
thank
really
you.
excited about that. No, appreciate that.
Can I make a comment on that
Yeah,
too?
sure.
It just seems to me that we should continue to go outside. You use a private company. I mean, the whole industry does that. I don't know anybody who would create a position to teach somebody how to get a CDL license.
Sure.
I mean, I have CDL drivers.
Right. Okay. Well, we're just looking at it right now. There's been a lot of changes in the federal government. It's very expensive, and there might just be portions, so I'll talk to Dee McBroom a little bit more about that, but I understand.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. 5 days, we adjusted their paid death leave, as we did with the other unions, to allow for 5 days for the death of your spouse, partner, your parent, your guardian, or your child. They have also agreed to the healthcare adjustment, so their biweekly contributions will increase by $10. There's no changes in fiscal year '24, and then an increase in prescription co-pays. That falls in line with all of the other units as well, and the non-union. I think that is, I guess the rest was all cleanup. We did also increase really pushing safety, so giving people opportunities to make sure that they're have the capacity and have a stipend to get no-slip shoes and any shoes that can help support them from any trips or falls, if that makes sense.
I assume we do safety classes also.
Yeah, that's usually bought in-house, and the vests and all of that stuff, so.
Are there any questions for April? David?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, so the new positions we created for cleaning at the animal shelter, will they be part of this unit?
They will, yes, they'll be recognized.
Thanks.
Any further questions? Hearing none, can you prompt the vote, please?
Mr. Chair, you have 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Good, thank you. Okay, next up is another Human Resources. This is the 2023-2025 Collective Bargaining Agreement. Employees represented by Oakland County Employees Union IBEW 58 for non-supervisory employees in the Water Resource Commission office. Is there a motion? Moved by Lutz. Is there support? Supported by Jensen. April.
Yeah, so very similar. There's just a couple of differences here. Again, with WRC, we pulled out their contract, as I mentioned, cleaned up language, made sure that there was clarity on issues that over the last year, couple of years, there hasn't been. They received the same wage increases that the other group did, so 3, 3, and a 2, again with the me also. They did have, again, they have a unique group. They did have to adjust some classifications there. I think there's a list in there about 7 classifications that they needed to reevaluate and update to be reflective of the market. And again, same thing, healthcare benefits, the driver's license bonus. Both groups, forgot to mention this, and the other group, we clarified what work schedules were to make sure that there's no confusion on-call, but also both units both unions are now able to use comp time instead of doing overtime if they would like. So they can now request to take up to 40 hours of comp time and have a bank of comp time if they would like, versus taking the overtime. And I think that's pretty much it. Yes.
Michael.
More formatting question.
Yes.
In the previous contract, the appendices look like this,
Okay.
with the year 1, 2, 3. And this contract, they look like this. Looks
Okay.
like a delta versus an actual number.
Okay.
It's kind of hard, it's hard for me to compare the two, it's actually almost impossible.
Okay.
So I'm just wondering if there's something that's driving that, or is it, if they were once one the same, now they're different. I'm kind of surprised that they don't follow the same format to a degree.
Was that one in the IBEW? Or they all did that?
Well, this one was in the first one for the animal shelter, and this is for water resource.
Oh, I think they just ran it from Workday, but we can make another chart.
Yeah, I mean, just from my perspective,
Sure.
this is easier for me to follow, so I can
Okay.
understand what the salaries would
Sure.
be year over year versus trying to have to do math.
We can do that.
I don't mind doing the math, but I need
Sure.
a starting point.
Yeah, we can adjust that, add that as a modification.
Okay, yeah, that's all I have.
Is there any further questions? David?
This was actually related to the other contract, but it's here too. So for non-represented employees, is the 457 match still just at $500? So this is a little bit better than that. Has there been any conversation, this is related to some discussions that have happened at the pension board, about an automatic enrollment into the 457? Like our 457, given our size, that we're a little bit like lower in participation, and there's some questions of like, I didn't know I needed to do that. I didn't know I had to take a step to do that. Is there any conversation about you're automatically enrolled unless you say you don't want to be enrolled, and to take advantage of the
match opportunities that exist out there.
Yeah, I can add, I mean, we're definitely doing we're gonna be doing a campaign. This will really help that campaign. I think that they're already in there. It's just getting in there and putting in your money, the money.
Yeah.
So this will help. But I can talk to Kari, that's one of our goals this year, is to do a huge push, an education component for this
Okay.
team.
I mean, I think that I don't want to speak for the full board, but in terms of like an automatic, like, achieve the maximum match, I mean, a lot of concern for long-term retirement and all those
Right.
other types of things. Something to think
Absolutely.
about. Okay. That's it.
Any other questions? I have one on the comp time.
Sure.
Are they paid fully at separation or retirement?
So it actually has to be, you have to take it within that fiscal year. So
Oh.
only if you left in that fiscal year, because it is time used, it's actual money. But we don't let them carry or
Carry over.
build on it. Yeah, we want it, whatever you don't use has to be paid out at the end of that fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? If not, vote.
Mr. Chair, you have 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Next up is item E, Board of Commissioners, 2023, 2024, Rules and Procedures and Guidelines of the Board of Commissioners. Is there a motion? Moved by Lube, supported by Jackson. Any, it says that you're presenting on
Yeah.
on the agenda?
Basically, yeah, and I do have members who are also part of the committee who are here who will be of assistance, I'm sure. I chaired this committee, and we were tasked to review, suggest edits, changes, deletions, inclusions for our board rules, and we basically drafted a new document to become our board rules in the future. This document was last discussed prior to our board meeting last Thursday afternoon, and we at that time asked for any other suggestions, edits, and we received an amendment from Commissioner Markham that'll be presented today, and then we also have a summary of changes that was requested by our fellow Commissioner Nelson. Commissioner Woodward, as I said, I have two other members here. The committee had Commissioners Mike Spiz, David Woodward, Marcia Gershenson, myself, and Honorable Mr. McGilvery. Commissioner Woodward, you had, and Commissioner
If I may,
Powell.
Chair.
I'm sorry, and Commissioner Powell.
Yeah, and we also have Patty Dibb that's online, that
Yes.
staff did a tremendous job. I mean, one of the tasks was to simplify this document. The past rules has been a combination of referencing past things and kind of this evolution that included a number of redundant things that required you to go to multiple sections to be able to kind of get the general guidance on how to operate. And so, at the end of the day, and while there was kind of a strike-through document, like kind of request put through, the staff was trying to configure our basic operation into a more simplistic. I mean, it comes down to 11 pages, of which half of them speak to a lot of the referral process and what items get referred to which standing committee, and I think they're pretty self-explanatory. The summary document kind of like looked at the substantial changes, as well as when there was some language in there that was a little non-congruent out of our normal process. For instance, like the annual meeting happening sometime between September 15th and October 15th. Our annual meeting is usually when we do our budget in September, and so like we're going to do the annual meeting in September. We need to have that budget adopted before October 1. So I mean, reference October didn't make any sense. I guess, and Patty's on. Patty, do you have any additional thing you want to add to this?
Thank you. No, just that, the point was to make it a standalone document that is an easy resource, and it references Robert's Rules and the Open Meetings Act, which we all know that we follow, as well as state law. So there, additional restating of those things was removed generally when necessary.
And then I guess one other little thing, I mean, probably throughout the document, there's reference to elected and serving, and we had some conversation to make certain, like, I mean, on the occasion someone is appointed and you're appointed to serve the remainder of that term, that if you're appointed, that, I mean, and you weren't elected, the same applies, but it's more, again, congruent in language, that makes it more simpler to understand and apply.
Very good. Any further questions?
I have a question, and just understanding, because I know I've been part of it, but I missed a meeting, so I don't know if you guys discussed this in the study group or not. The red line, section, Section 8, appointments of committees, and then Section I, restrictions on board considerations and resolutions. It's been removed, and it references Rule 14A, but I don't see it in there. So historically, we run as a normal operation, which I think we still do today, is based on the committee structure. This item allowed, or made a statement that everything has to go through committee, stays in committee, and can't go back to the board unless we waive rule.
Which
12.
item was it? Mike?
Section 7, page 13 of the red line. Section I. See it there at the bottom? It's gotta be the red line. The red line's not like it's in the packet. Then I don't see that same point in the new version. Am I missing something? Was the intent to not include it? Was it just overlooked? 'Cause I know staff did a great job of reorganizing everything.
Yeah, so this
And
is,
I just-
you're talking about discharging from a committee?
Yeah.
I thought that, so Robert's Rules lays out the process for discharge. And so and this is more complicated than what's in Robert's Rules for discharging from committee. So a discharge, Robert's Rules is our foundational governing document. The full board can at any time discharge from a committee following Robert's Rules. This is really no different than what's already in Robert's Rules. Patty, I don't know if you want to, am I saying that correctly? I mean, again.
Yes,
read
that's,
that.
my notes say that Robert's rules address it.
Okay.
So I should read Robert's Rules to make sure,
That,
see
yeah.
what the difference is and what we've
There is,
been doing.
and this is one of the examples, like, so the Board of Commissions, unless it shall discharge from pursuant to Rule 9F, shall not act upon a resolution which has not received recommendation from committee to which is referred, so provided that Rule 12, standing committee procedures. Like, I don't even know what that means. Except for a discharge procedure is actually very clearly defined in Robert's Rules, in that a motion, any member of the board can make a motion to discharge from committee an item that has not taken action to be brought to the floor.
Okay, that part I'll have to read up, because
Yep.
just, the reason this stuck out to me is based on a previous meeting where something was pulled off committee and brought to the board for vote, and it wasn't discharged.
It doesn't.
That's why it
Right.
stuck out to me. So I'll have to read Robert's Rules.
Yeah, that's a little, I think the item that you were talking about was a resolution brought forward, the rules were suspended to take up a separate resolution. That's
what I
different,
need-
that's different than discharge.
That's what I need to understand.
Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
think they're different, but
You done?
I'm done, for now.
And just
Yeah.
quickly to reiterate that this document is a living document that can be approached, and resolutions can be, amendments, can be brought forth to make changes or anything that does
Yeah.
not occur before our full vote. I mean, we have, there's no end date, really.
Right. And one other thing I want to point in here, and just in terms of practice, that committee, whether they're department resolutions or committee resolutions that are generated, often have the sponsor name of the committee chair, and that was always the default. Well, what happens when the chair of the committee is not supportive of said action? So that's come up in the past, and so there is some flexibility in here to make sure that a sponsor is being brought forward. Or if it's something that deals with Commissioner Jackson's district, our general tendency is to put the sponsors on an item that's relative to their respective districts. And so, like, those more technical, like house cleaning items, but were appropriate to address.
I do have.
Mr.
But
Smith?
other generic question.
Mhm.
Did we have Corp Counsel kind of peruse this? I think we did. I saw
An
some
item
emails.
for sure,
Yes, the
but the
link.
document in its entirety as well, at its current,
I don't know if the, okay, so,
Yeah, not
so Corp Counsel, there was one provision that we spelled out a little bit more detail, because it's come up in the past, about abstentions, and laid out the circumstances, the very narrow circumstances where that's allowed, and the actions that commissioners have to take, that if there is a conflict of interest, which generally means a personal vested interest, financial interest, you have to disclose that prior to the vote, and then you do not vote for or against the matter, and does not count towards the final, the final tally. The language that's included on that section, and I don't, Patty, can you just tell me what page it's on, was reviewed by Corp Counsel, and we asked Corp
It's
Counsel.
Rule 16.
Rule 16, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
so, yeah, Corp Counsel, the tweaking of that language was language that Corp Counsel recommended.
All right. A question that may go along with that from Corp Counsel question. And maybe I need to ask Patty first, because we changed the title to say Rules of Procedure and Guidelines of the Oakland County Board of Commissioners. I guess I'm confused the difference between procedure and guidelines and the definition of those that is being assumed for this.
Because-
Is that in Robert's rules? Is there a definition for procedure and a definition of guidelines? Because there's nowhere in here what the difference is. Because to me, they're two different things.
The guidelines is the title of the committee referral and guidelines. It's meant to be inclusive of the appendices.
So in the appendices, the guidelines to departments on where the flow of work and the guidelines of what's referred to what committee. And so the title is intended to be the encompassing of the rules in which we operate, and then the guidelines and how we refer items.
Is that defined somewhere? Hear what
It's
you're
one of
s-
the appendices.
But does it say it in the appendices?
It says the committee referral guidelines.
Down at the end, okay, sorry.
Mhm.
Mr. Hoffman?
I just have one comment, and this has come up in the past, and it's 14.2, where somebody introduced a resolution, and it's introduced, and it will be referred to a committee per the board chair's determination, and may be placed on a committee agenda at the discretion of the committee chair. So that's still okay. If you refer it, it's gonna be on the committee, because I've seen where it was never put on the committee.
Oh, it's
So
not a
what-
guarantee that it goes on the committee agenda.
There's no
It goes-
guarantee?
Yeah, but that's how we've always done it.
But it's up to the chair, right, of
Chair of
that
the committee.
committee?
Chair of the committee.
Okay.
Sets the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
I think does it say more than that? That was chair, vice chair, and chair of the board. Did I read that somewhere in here?
Oh, I don't know if it says,
Unless I was reading something.
Our practice, and I believe this has been the practice since almost 20
when the
years.
other
I've been on the
people
board.
were in charge.
Something like that, the committee chairs work with staff to prepare the agenda. And then the very first action at the meeting, if you want to amend that agenda, I mean, it can be done there, but the committee chairs of each standing committee sets the agenda.
So once they set the agenda, though, and the committee is called to order, it still could be added to the agenda if the committee votes on it.
There's a motion to approve the agenda, like we did on this meeting. And a
As
motion
amended.
can amend to add something,
Which is Robert's rules. I believe.
which is also part of Robert's rules.
Okay, it's named after me.
I noticed. You were on the ship. You were the captain of the ship.
Any other questions?
Or
Janet?
just to point out that one of the changes that we made, is simplistic, is the order of our meetings has been changed. Our presentation and proclamations will occur in the meetings prior to communications now. I hope I have that right. you
Oh, it's
know.
been,
Yeah.
the order's been changed?
Yeah, order of.
It used to be that
order of
communications, like
meetings.
all of it was like added, is one big cluster, and so we're gonna do presentations, particularly when we're bringing someone in to give a presentation to us, that they will start. If there are proclamations that commissioners are giving out, will be next, and then communications will follow that. So it's all
Okay.
still being done around the same time in the agenda, but we're spelling them out individually. In that way, presentations won't get in the tally of proclamations that we do at the night.
Okay.
Yes.
Any further discussion? If not, can we, I'm sorry.
So there is an amendment.
Yeah, oh, yes.
So I mean, I'll move the Markham amendment. I think it's actually a good, as we've actually expanded, it did some things, and this might come up before. There was nothing in here that said, where do the annual reports, updates, a request from the Office of Environmental Sustainability regarding sustainability and energy policy and usage, which include Oakland County's progress towards meeting stated goals and objectives. Where does that go? I mean, we create that office, but the office creates, as we know, Aaron and company. Historically, we've had those reports go to ED, Economic Development and Infrastructure, and so this would just add under that committee that that's where that stuff goes.
Question, is that a rule or?
Well, it falls under.
Additional Rule 10.
The
Yeah.
First Amendment.
It's the first, the amendment speaks to, so if you can see, like, in the back end of these rules, I'm sorry, I gotta pull it up on here. Like that.
Does anybody support it? You motioned, did somebody support it?
I'll support.
Supported by Lutz.
Okay.
If you look at. Easy for page. Like half these board rules are literally the items that go to the standing committees. So it's in there, so.
While he looks that up, my only question is EDI the right place for it? I agree in general with what they're asking, but is EDI the right place for it? It's sustainability. It's the energy policy, which is infrastructure. Sustainability is bigger than that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Where do you see it going? Not EDI.
On page 6 is like responsibilities for economic development and infrastructure committee. So, to date, I would say that the conversations, the reports on the sustainability plans, the initial grant reviews for things to support that office have been going there. I tend to agree with Commissioner Spiz, and if you think of the three committees, LAGO, EDI, and Public Health and Safety as the policy committees of the board, and you have finance as the appropriating. So which of those three? I think EDI is probably the best one, but I mean, there's definitely, in terms of, since facilities is captured there, and a lot of the work that we're doing internally is about energy efficiency for facilities, and it makes sense for it to be there. But certainly, from a public health perspective, I could argue sustainability policy, especially if it's more external, makes sense. LAGO as a catch-all for everything else. So, I'm not married to it. Maybe we need a fifth committee.
I don't think we need a fifth committee.
So that's why EDI is the recommendation of where.
And I can understand that side of it, it's just thinking bigger picture. Where LAGO would probably be best person.
I would agree, actually, because I see it being rather all-encompassing and inflective or introspective, and I feel like
I'm on both, so it doesn't matter, but procedurally wise.
Do we want both? I guess the only thing I would say is that, especially since we're dealing with so much of the work that we're gonna be doing, at least in the short term, is to deal with facilities.
Could we be a little bit more specific, and maybe EDI is specific to energy? And then LAGO is more specific to sustainability as a whole?
Like sustainability from an environmental, is it sustainability in terms of what?
I mean, because you have everything else from a sustainability perspective, you got just resources, you have.
Oh, that's not what Aaron's department is.
I-
Yeah, that's what, so.
Okay, fine. You're specific to just what Aaron's doing.
Yes. That's what the point of this was, that amendment, is like all, the Office of Sustainability, Environment and Sustainability, where does that stuff go? I don't have a very strong preference. I think EDI has to be part of it,
No,
but.
I can agree with that, okay. Maybe we leave it there and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Consider it dynamic.
Any further questions or discussion? If not, we'll be voting on the amendment first. Can you prompt the vote?
Sure. Chair, you have 7 yeas, 0 nays.
Okay, back on the board rules as amended. Do we need a motion?
We have a motion on the floor already for the
Okay.
main motion.
All right, we have a motion. Is there any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, can you prompt the vote on as amended?
Mr. Chair, you have 6 yeas, 1 nay.
Thank you very much. Next up is public comment. Is there anyone that would like to address and make public comment on any topic? Hearing none?
Mr.
Oh,
Chair,
I'm sorry.
I just, for the committee, and I'll make the announcement at the next, well, actually, I think it happens before the next board meeting, so an email's gonna go around. Well, at least once a term, I don't know if we're gonna do it once a year, and Patty can correct me, but at least once a term, working with corp counsel to do a review of record retention policies, Open Meetings Act, make sure that commissioners are in full compliance of the law. That's got, I mean, it has to be done. I know that there's something in, we're gonna see who's all done. It will be a published list of who's done it and who's not. And I just hope that everyone just does it so that we don't have to figure out what do we have to do to make sure you do it. But we want to be able to communicate to the world. Every commissioner, at least once a term, is going through just a refresher, what records do you need to retain for FOIA requests, record retention policy, Open Meetings Act, to make sure that this board's in full compliance.
Michael?
I think that's a great idea, but I would ask, are we also gonna be looking at what everybody else in the county does in general? I think it's good for us, but that also affects everybody else from a training perspective.
I think Lago should work on that.
From a record retention, it's kind of what I do.
No, well, it is, and it's actually a really good point. I mean, because the way that, and I don't want to speak out of school, but I think Lago might want to like do take an inventory about like making sure that the people who are in charge, every department has a FOIA officer, and make sure that that's all standardized. Departments, I don't want to say handle it their own way, but like the request comes in, they process it and goes through, but we should probably make sure that whatever training we have, ours is a little bit different because we're elected officials. I think we can make, for other county elected officials, make it available. But particularly for this body, given that there's 19 of us, we're a little bit different in which our deliberations have to be done in a public area, whereas conversations of an individual elected official does not. So, but I think that's actually a good idea, is like to do an evaluation and also get a sense on what it's costing. When we did the body cam stuff, that one thing that came up is that the cost to being compliant with FOIA request is significant, and so we had to actually work with the vendor to give back some of the resources to help fund that effort. So I think it is a bigger conversation for the county, but from a board perspective, all 19 of us need to go through this.
Staff?
What's the term? Yeah. Staff will be going through it too. They can do it. The electeds have to do it. All their stuff. I mean, they know that everything that they do is FOIAble. Many of us are not here doing things.
Is there any other business?
Is public comment closed?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't close it, you're right. With that, is public comment is closed, and there's no other business, meeting stands adjourned.
Nice job there.